beautifully with good music in slow-mo. You can really see what the boards are doing.
Okay, well, let's see how we go. It's enormously gratifying working with Torren and everyone in all of these projects. And I guess in the very early stages of even just knowing of Torren was at board riders. And I remember Dash he was in the little guys, and I'd be pushing them in or whatever. Actually, no, Dash was pretty self-sufficient then. And I'd always be looking at the other bank, and I'd notice Torren, this tall, angular, languid sort of surfer, and he just stood out to me. And then after a number of years, I got the opportunity to shape some boards for him, and it was through a tracks thing that was done, and I shaped him a couple of asymmetric single fins, and incidentally he doesn't like single fins, but I remember one day at Lennox, just down from the jump off, and watching him ride a few waves on this one particular one, and just really thinking there was a whole lot more to Torren than what we'd sort of seen at board riders, and although he's incredibly accomplished there too. And so where I'm going with that is that he's always been very open to things that I throw at him, and part of what I throw at him comes from growing up in another era when boards were incredibly different to how they are now, or how they were in the recent past. And I've always brought design elements to my boards from my childhood, which were essentially single fins from the 70s and thicker thrusters from the 80s. And I started throwing that sort of stuff at Torren, and you really started to see very quickly how Torren was unafraid to be himself and surf the way he actually surfs. You know, he suddenly was just doing his own thing, and that was enormously satisfying to see that. And then one of the real breakaway points was when I shaped him a 710, and I'd never shaped him anything over 6 foot. And I shaped this 710, and I gave it to him one day, and I heard back very quickly about how this board had changed his life. And that sort of informed, that one board sort of informed a lot of what we've done since that time. Yeah, it's been, have I answered the question?
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I guess, you know, it's kind of sparked a bit of a revolution in surfing. Like it feels like every brand on the planet's making a mid-length pin twin. So you guys should be, you know, proud of sort of that little spark, you know. Thank goodness we're not all on little white thrusters.
Talking about sparks, you reminded me of a spark, and I think this is a little bit of a rave, bear with me. Back in like the late 60s, Albie left work, right? He was working at Hanamex developing film. He walked out on the dusty old Sydney streets, or smoky old Sydney streets, and he's going home on the ferry, and he bumped into 2 nuns, and they got chatting on the street corner, and the nuns asked Albie what they'd like him to do, what he would like to do with his life, and he said, "Oh, I'd really love to make a beautiful surf film." And that little spark went off. These 3 sort of quite spiritual people in this one conversation And to me, that sort of represents where, in part, what all of us are here tonight and where surfing is at the moment. I'm getting nervous and emotional for some reason. Because I see that as a really pivotal point for Albie and surfing, that happened. Then Morning of the Earth was made, and all of these things rolled on from that moment. You know, my interest in boards, all of the musicians that made that initial album, and it leads right through to Torren. And I remember when Albie, I sort of introduced those two guys, and Albie and Torren just clicked immediately. And I remember Albie talking to me. He came, we were at his place, and he said, "Simon, this is amazing. This is like a flower that's in full bloom." He was like, "Morning of the Earth has sort of come to this point." And when I think of that, and then that's another step. And then here we are tonight, and it's all of these things that sort of manifest, and all of us here are sort of open to that sort of experience, and it's only something that surfing and music and filmmaking and all that sort of thing can bring to all of us. So it's an important spark, that one back in the 1960s.